Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1997 Pinnacle baseball set and the 1997 new Pinnacle baseball set. And I would normally do these as two different videos, but I really need to combine them together because they're basically Pinnacle and Pinnacle again. It's a weird relationship between these two sets because, like in 1998, they did a whole bunch of different Pinnacle sets, but in 1997 they did a main Pinnacle set, and then they kind of came up with an idea of doing an upgraded set leading into what we would know in football. And that's the key. If you're not a baseball card collector and you come to this set and you look at 1997's new Pinnacle set, you look at that and go, oh yeah, that's totally Pinnacle. But it's not Pinnacle because Pinnacle has another design. They came up with one design and then they came up with an upgraded design to release as a full separate set that looks like a regular Pinnacle set. So there are two different 1997 Pinnacle sets for baseball. It's just that one of them, the one that should be the regular set, is called New Pinnacle. Really quirky, but they really did need to upgrade it because the card for the regular Pinnacle set in 1997 was another step in their big, lots of gold foil at the bottom card approach. In 1996, they had a pinnacle. They had a pinnacle in the middle. It was a big triangle of gold foil. In 1997, they continued to have a bunch of foil, but instead they went with the baseball diamond, where it's a perspectival view of an infield and the foul area of the baseball diamond, and then the outfield is just a void where you see the image of the player. That's the design that they have. It's a quirky design where it's basically like you're the umpire. That's kind of the way to think of it. And you probably wouldn't notice it unless you really got a chance to look at it. It looks basically like a big W. I mean, it just looks dumb. You got to look at the texturing. And the texturing is where the card gets interesting because for the whole foul area, they have text, little words of text that's all related to the team. So you have legends, the names of legends from the team. You have words related to the team, related to the city. Every single team has a different collection of words that are associated with it. And so it's fun to explore those words if you can read them because the text is really small and it's all in relief. So that means it's gold foil and you got to be able to read the gold foil itself, which is pretty tough. Getting the lighting right, all of that is pretty challenging. But it's an interesting design idea that they came up with on a card that is otherwise pretty clunky. But while the front is clunky, the back looks like a Denny's card. This is a card that can easily throw you off to where you're trying to figure out, how in the world is this a regular card? This looks like it looks like a Denny's card. I mean, it really does. I really don't know what their thinking was with this set because they, especially when you see what they came up with New Pinnacle, this is a card that just doesn't feel right. And then when you go over to the rookies are done the same way, except like in 1996, they have red text for the player name instead of black text, but the back is very, very different. These cards are just a weird, interesting idea that Pinnacle came up with that we only saw in baseball, and thank goodness that was the case. But the set is a 200 card set, and the parallels for this year are, well, all of the cards come as parallels. So the first parallel is the museum collection, which is a long-standing tradition for Pinnacle. In this case, they have almost a 3D effect on it, which is really kind of interesting. The way that the fan behind the player has a depth to it. Just the way that everything moves on the card is really kind of interesting. This is not the flashiest card, not by a long shot, but it is a pretty interesting card that they came up with that is very distinct. But with artist proof, this is where it really gets interesting because with the artist proof cards, obviously, as you can see, it is the whole background is replaced by copper foil. A bunch of thin bands make up the entire structure of it. And then they have this spectral effect that is working around on this card. But what's interesting is that this is actually just for the basic players. There are actually three different colors of artist proof cards. There are copper cards, there are silver cards, and there are gold cards. They're done the exact same way, so they have the same spectral effect. All of that is the same. It's just that a player has only one of the three different colors. So basic players have copper colors, semi-stars have silver, and then the stars have gold. So that means this is a set that is spread out where all of the cards come in one of the different colors, and the gold cards are the hardest to come by. Silver are not quite as hard, but still pretty tricky. So in putting together this set, it's difficult. It's like 1996 Finest. When you put together the copper set, they have a whole bunch of holes in it because they're silver cards and gold cards that are not in the copper set. So it takes a long time to be able to fill in those holes with all of the different colors of foil. They're not grouped into groupings. They're all spread out. They're all throughout the set. So it is a very interesting design approach that they took, and it makes it difficult to collect the set. So the set does have one subset in it, although it doesn't entirely have a subset. It's called Clout, and these cards are, well, frankly, this is the only way that these particular players come. So there are a number of players in the set where the way that they design their card is in this subset, which is numerically grouped together as a subset, but there are almost no players in the card set that have two cards. So the Clout cards, this is the card for this particular player. But the Clout cards are really interesting when you get into the parallels, because the spectral effect for the museum collection cards, it has thicker bands than the artist proof, but it has horizontal bands, and then it has its own 3D effect like design. But then when you look at the artist proof cards, it's like two searchlights or spotlights shining opposite each other, making a really cool design all its own. So these cards are very, very interesting in terms of their parallels. But I did mention that there are a couple of players, or I said almost all the players have only one card, because there are a few checklists at the end, and these are second cards of the individual players on the checklist. So just a couple of cards on the back, done in the same way as before. They have a picture of the player on the front, checklist on the back, and that's the set. So the set itself, there's not too much that goes into the set, except of course for the artist proof, which is kind of crazy. So with the inserts, the first insert is Cardfrontation. And Cardfrontation is a hitter on the card front and a pitcher on the card back. The card front has a couple of pictures of the player, it has some holofoil on it, and the logo looks almost like a Topps Gold label card that we would see in the next year. It's not quite that complex, it just looks that complex. It's a cool effect to it. But on the back, the pitcher is just a regular card. So the front has the spectral effects, on the back it's just a straightforward card. All the pictures are just kind of there. That's the way this card design was done. They also did a set of jersey cards. Not jersey swatch cards, but themed around jerseys. This is taken from what they did in 1996 in football, where they had these little cutout cards of jerseys where they actually had sleeves, which made indentations on the card that made it really difficult to work with the cards. They're cool little cards, but still they're kind of funky. So they decided to do that in the 1997 baseball set. But here they solved the problem with the sleeves by folding them, thematically folding them into the card. So the sides are straight, but they have die cutting at the bottom, die cutting at the top with a notch for the neck of the jersey. And yeah, and then a gray surface or a gray material for the card, or gray color for the card. And you can see that it says away. Most of the cards look like this with gray on them. Not all of them, but most of them do look this way. But these cards also have a parallel, which is the home version of the card. And the home version of the card, this is a case where the card is, normally it's just pure white. That's the design. But that, again, that's not always the case. But in most cases, the white card is the home, which is a lot harder. And then the gray version is the away, which is a lot easier to read. And the card set is designed with kind of an intermix. So the home, it is the away jersey and then the home, the away jersey and then the home. And so the cards are numbered separately. So if you're only collecting the away cards, you get half the set, syncopated. If you collect only the home cards, which is tough to do, you get all the other cards that are all syncopated. So they feather together numerically. And then they have a set called Passports. And Passports is kind of tricky because these are folded cards. The card is designed like a mini passport. Well, I shouldn't say a mini passport, a semi-mini passport. It is a black surface that almost has a leather-like look to it in the color. It's not textured, it's just black. Gold foil for the text, and then a flag in the middle of the card. Because these cards are intended, the card set is intended to look at players from around the world. Alex Rodriguez happens to be a U.S. player, so that means that he has the U.S. flag on it, but it has a U.S. flag on the front, or it has a flag on the front, card number on the back, but when you open it up, inside it's themed around being a passport. Big logo for the team he plays on right in the middle of the card. It has some cancellation, or not some cancellation, but some stamps spread around. It's a really cool design for this card. But you got to be careful with these cards because these cards also can be found as sample cards. On the outside, they're identical. But when you open them up, you got sample stamped on either side like a big cancellation or big void stamp. So if you're going to buy one of these, make sure that you see one where they show the inside so you know whether it's the sample or the regular one, because you got to be paying attention in some cases. But it's still a really cool set. And then they did shades once again. Shades, they've already done this a couple of times, and it's, player with sunglasses. This is a horizontal card with some die cutting on the top for the top of the glasses, and the whole card has a foil surface, a mirror foil surface, which it's not just difficult to photograph, it also is difficult to really look kind of cool. It just doesn't do that, but it's another insert set. And then the last insert set they did was Team Pinnacle. Of course, they always did Team Pinnacle except for in the very first set. Here it is a horizontal card. They have a baseball theme in the Dufex with this big fiery explosion right behind the player. Interesting combination of those two elements. Player obviously in the middle. And then on the card back you have the NL player who is just on a normal card surface. And it is my understanding that they only did them Dufex on the front, regular on the back. From what I understand, the National League players never have the Dufex on their side. But this card set does have something interesting, which is that it has sort of a checklist. It has one card that features all of the players from both teams. So on the front, you have all the AL players on a Dufex card surface with, the baseball, and then they all have these little discs that they're inside. And so the way that all looks is really, really interesting. Obviously on the back, you have a no Dufex surface with all the NL players. But it is basically a checklist of the two sets. And that is what they did in packs. But they did do another set for FanFest, like they'd done the year before. In this case, for the 1997 design, it's kind of like a stadium down at the bottom. It has some brushed metal in it. It's designed like the bleachers, and then there's the space to walk up to the stadium right in the middle. Decent enough design. But they do have an SP card in this set for Sandy Alomar. And this is a card that has a plasticky, almost, I want to say mylar, but that's not the right word for it. But it has a very thin, flexible, plasticky quality to it. Very similar to what we were seeing in the Pinnacle certified cards. Not quite the same, but similar. And this card has not Dufex, but it does have some almost etched metal on the front and some mirror surface, creating a really lively, dynamic, spectral effect for the whole card that does look really cool, but it feels very, very, very different. It is a unique card, and it is a difficult to come by SP card, so these cards do tend to be a little pricey. But they also did promo cards like they'd done the previous year related to the city that was the host of FanFest, which was Cleveland. So whether it's the mascot or the mayor or, a bunch of different bunch of different figures in all of this putting together FanFest, these cards are not a part of the main set. They're a secondary group of cards that you can run into. They also did playing style cards, so they're thinner, they have a different feel to them. They are they're difficult to come by, but these cards do also come in that form. And then there is one standalone card that you might run into, which is a Jackie Robinson card. It's associated with FanFest, but it's a card set that was created across all of the brands in baseball. This is a Dufex card, really cool looking, but it's not part of FanFest or anything else. It's related specifically to Pinnacle. It's part of a Jackie Robinson card set, and this is the Pinnacle card for that set. So if you run into it, basically treat it like an SP card, because that's really basically what it is. And that is 1997 Pinnacle proper. But they came up with a new design for Pinnacle, one that was very much fitting with what Pinnacle should have been. Now, in 1995, at least with the football cards, Pinnacle had an amazing design, but it was one of the few times that Pinnacle truly had one of the great standout card designs in the sport. In 1997, they came up with another set that really kind of did have that spirit to it, but it wasn't the set we just talked about. It was another set they were going to be releasing in football, and they wanted to take the opportunity to give baseball collectors the opportunity to collect these cards as well. So they called it New Pinnacle. And New Pinnacle is basically just another Pinnacle set in 1997 for baseball collectors. And oh, these are amazing cards. They have a little plaque down at the bottom with holofoil in it, and then they have the player name with what's almost like a team color enamel with the gold foil around everything. It's just a jewel box design down at the bottom of this card. It's one of those cards that you feel lucky to be able to collect. It's just too fancy, too exquisite for card collecting. Gorgeous, especially with the fact that they tended to have some really good images on these cards. So it's really great design. And when you look at the museum collection cards, this one can definitely throw you off because the whole background behind is in gold foil. And the gold, it makes it look like it's an artist-proof card. So it's a fancy version, or it's a fancy looking card for a moderately accessible parallel. But it can throw you off where you think it's the artist-proof, but it's not the artist-proof for good reason. Because the artist-proof, well, I mean, come on. This is an impressive card. The whole background is replaced by this real fine Dufex effect of all red with kind of a beam of light coming down the middle. Just the way that it comes through with all that color is so rich. It's a gorgeous card. But look, in the regular set, there were 3 different artist-proof cards. Well, here they have the same thing. So while the red cards are reserved for the basic players, the semi-stars, they all have blue for their cards, which is a whole nother rich color, and then green, of course, for the superstars. So that's the way that it is. There is red, there's blue, and there's green, and just like in 1997, they're intermixed. So when you put together the whole 200 card set, you're going to have these 3 colors popping up at different places, but that's if you can finish the set, because it is tough to get all of these cards, especially the green ones. They're very rare, very highly sought after, but they are very, very impressive to look at. Do love them. And then they do have 2 subsets that are actual subsets here in this set. The first one is East meets West, and this is looking at, there were a bunch of baseball games that were played in Japan, and there were a couple of players that were chosen from those games, so this is what these cards are. And they have a picture from the event, and they have holofoil for the East and West text down at the bottom, and in between they have a band that has the Japanese flag on one side and the American flag on the other, and they kind of have a phase between the two, which can be tricky to realize that yes, in fact, on the left side of the card, that is a Japanese flag. It's the red logo in the middle, the sun, and then it's the white band afterwards, and then its fade into blue is supposed to be fading into the American flag, which you'll just have to take their word for it. But this is a really, really nice looking card, which you would expect from this set. It's just well crafted. But when you look at the museum collection card, you can see how the parallels are done for this, where it's just all that stuff around the outside. That's where you get to see the effect, but it really does look nice. It's fun to see these cards. And then they have one more insert set, or one more subset called Aurora, and this is so impressive. I mean, this looks like an insert card. It has a picture of the player. It has these clouds with the sun just kind of cutting through a little bit. And then you have a pyramid of the player picture, which goes down into the Aurora text in holofoil in a way where they integrate together. This is gorgeous. But then you look at the parallel of the card and wow, looking at how that light, how all the clouds, all of that stuff works is just so impressive. This is a card where I love the way that they crafted it. I think it's just, this is just such an amazing card. Definitely a highlight of the new Pinnacle set. And likewise, obviously, they finished with a couple of checklists, which is just a player on the front, checklist on the back, nothing too special about it. But that brings the new Pinnacle set to a close. But now's when it gets interesting, because now we're heading into the inserts. And for new Pinnacle, these inserts are really something. The first one is called Interleague Encounter. And this is a card that has a plasticky, almost a metallic kind of a feel to it. It's a thin card, it warps a bit, and it has a mirrored surface on either side. So the front and the back both have this mirrored surface. This, of course, is playing into the fact that Major League Baseball was having AL and NL regular season games, and this was still a really fascinating new addition to baseball, so there was a lot of interest to it. This is showing you a couple of the matchups. But like I said, the feel of this card is very different, it's very distinct, and it is a very shiny card. A little bit too much, but at any rate. And then they had a set called Spellbound. And Spellbound is a set you see every once in a while. Different manufacturers have released it. They have a number of different players, and they have individual cards for each letter of their name. So for Alex Rodriguez, it's Alex. For Cal Ripken Jr., it's Ripken. For Ken Griffey Jr., it's Jr. For Frank Thomas, it's Big Hurt, that kind of thing. So every single player, all of the cards in their name, they have individual numbers. But each of these cards are really nicely crafted. It's not quite Dufex, but it's a relief and some almost etched foil, and it really does have a cool look to it when you let the light really capture it. But then also you have the gold foil around the letters. Looks great. And the picture on the back is one that varies from card to card. So the key is you want to get all the cards that spell out their name. In this case, Alex Rodriguez, you want to get A, L, E, and X. And you might notice that there's kind of like a band, a black band down toward the bottom, and that has the letters that spell out Spellbound across the entire collection of cards. So they have a couple of little elements that they kind of tossed in that are just kind of fun. And then the last insert set that they did for New Pinnacle is Keeping Pace. And I mean, what else is there to say but, oh, this is so cool. I love the way that it looks. I like bright, shiny objects, and this is just incredible. I can't even really say anything about it. I just love looking at it, and just, I mean, it says everything that it needs to say all on its own. Gorgeous cards, really a lot of fun. And that was Pinnacle and New Pinnacle for baseball in 1997. Now, we would only get one more year of Pinnacle in baseball, and we wouldn't even get to it in football, which is unfortunate. So the baseball set, that's what I'm going to be looking at for in an upcoming video. If you haven't seen all of the sets leading up to this set, definitely check that out, because it is interesting watching the evolution that Pinnacle went through. And while the main 1997 Pinnacle set wasn't quite on point, they did have a couple of good inserts. When they got to the next set, which was New Pinnacle, they were really hitting on everything. It was so cool the way that everything came together. A lot of fun, but Pinnacle was always kind of an interesting journey throughout its entire history. So definitely look out for the 1998 video for when I finally release that. Now, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I do urge you to do so, and check out my other videos. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.